Hello everybody, this is Refresh and I am here to bring you a battle between the two Theros Beyond Death Planeswalker decks and the Face the Hydra challenge deck from the original Theros. We'll be playing two games, first on regular mode with 3 Hydra heads and then on hard mode. And for these games we'll be using 2 hero cards. The first one is the Harvester. It says tap, draw a card, then discard a card. And the second one is the Warrior, which says tap, target creature you control gains haste until end of turn. Because I only have one copy of each of these cards, we're going to be applying them to both decks simultaneously. We'll get started by drawing our opening hands. Ashiok draws a Towering Wave Mystic, Ashiok's Forerunner, Gravebreaker Lamia, Swamp, Unknown Shores, Island, and Funeral Rites. This is a okay start, so we'll go ahead and keep it. Elspeth draws a Plains, Leonin of the Lost Pride, Plains, Elspeth Undaunted Hero, Elspeth's Devotee, and Plains. I think this is a fine opening hand, so we'll keep that as well. Turn 1, we'll play an Island over here with Ashiok, and we'll play a Plains over here with Elspeth. And then we'll pass to the Hydra. The Hydra will cast the topmost card, which is Disorienting Glower. It says players can't cast spells until the Hydra's next turn. And then we'll take 3 damage from the assembled heads to go down to 17 each. And at the end of the turn, we'll use the Harvester. Ashiok draws a Swamp and will discard the Unknown Shores. Elspeth draws a Plains and we will discard the Elspeth Undaunted Hero. And then we'll untap. Ashiok draws a Swamp. Elspeth draws a Daybreak Chimera. We'll play a Plains over here. We'll play a Swamp over here. We cannot cast spells this turn, so we're going to have to take a turn off. And we'll pass the turn back to the Hydra. The Hydra will cast the topmost card, which is Unified Lunge. Deals X damage to each player, where X is the number of heads on the battlefield. So we'll be taking 6 more damage this turn to go down to 11 each. At the end of the turn, we'll use the Harvester again. Ashiok draws a Swamp and we'll discard that Swamp. Elspeth draws a Karametra's Blessing and we'll discard the Karametra's Blessing. We'll untap. Ashiok will draw a Pharika's Spawn. Elspeth will draw a Plains. We'll play the Plains. We'll play a Swamp over here. Ashiok will spend 2 mana and cast Towering Wave Mystic. This is a 2/1 Merfolk Wizard. Whenever it deals damage, target player puts that many cards from the top of their library into their graveyard. Elspeth will tap 2 and will play a Leonin of the Lost Pride. This is a 3/1 Cat Warrior. When it dies, exile target card from an opponent's graveyard. We will tap the Warrior to give each of those creatures haste, and then we will attack 2 different Hydra heads with these. This will kill 1 Hydra head. And it says on it, Hero's Reward. When Hydra Head leaves the battlefield, each player gains 2 life. So we'll gain 2 life each to go back up to 13 each. And then the dealing damage trigger will happen here, and we will mill 2 cards. We'll mill the Hydra. We'll take Sword Between Heads out, and we'll also remove a Hydra head. And then we will reveal 2 cards to see if there are any new heads. There is 1 new regular Hydra head. And then we will go to the Hydra's turn. The Hydra will cast the topmost card, which is a Swallow the Hero Whole. Each player exiles a creature he or she controls until the Hydra's next turn. When a head leaves the battlefield, return the exiled cards to the battlefield under their owner's control. This will cause both of these to be exiled, and then we will return them should we be able to remove a head. At the end of the turn, we'll use the Harvester. Ashiok draws a Swamp, and we'll discard that Swamp. Elspeth draws a Plains, and we will discard the Plains. We'll untap. Ashiok draws a Mindwrack Harpy, and Elspeth draws an Eidolon of Inspiration. Elspeth will play a Plains, and Ashiok will play a Swamp. We'll tap 4 mana here, and play the Mindwrack Harpy. This is a 3/2 enchantment Harpy. It has flying. At the beginning of combat on your turn, each player puts the top 3 cards of their library into their graveyard. We'll also spend 4 mana here and cast Elspeth's Devotee. This is a 3/3 human soldier. When it enters the battlefield, you may search your library and or graveyard for a card named Elspeth Undaunted Hero. Reveal it and put it into your hand. If you search your library this way, shuffle it. We'll go ahead and grab Elspeth Undaunted Hero and put it back into our hand. And then we will tap the warrior to give both of these haste. We will trigger the Mindrak Harpy's ability and we'll put the top 3 cards of each library into their graveyard. Ashiok mills a swamp, and an island. Elspeth mills a plains, a dreadful apathy, and a phalanx tactics. The Hydra will mill a distract the Hydra, a strike the weak spot, and a Hydra head. And then we will go to combat. We will attack 2 of the Hydra heads with these 2 creatures. That will kill 2 Hydra heads, giving us 4 life apiece, taking us back up to 17 each. And then we're going to reveal 4 cards to see if there are any new heads. We have 1 new Hydra head. Then we'll go to the Hydra's turn. The Hydra will cast the top card, which is Torn Between Heads. Tap up to 2 heads. They don't untap during the Hydra's next untap step. Torn Between Heads deals 5 damage to each player. These 2 will be tapped. We'll take 5 damage apiece to go back down to 12 each. At the end of the turn, we'll use the Harvester. Ashiok draws a Sleep of the Dead. We will put that into the graveyard. Elspeth draws a Plains, and we will put that into the graveyard. We'll untap. Ashiok draws a Swamp. Elspeth draws a Plains. We'll play the Plains. We'll play the Swamp. We'll go ahead and start by going to combat, and we will mill 3. Ashiok mills a Devourer of Memory, a Underworld Charger, and an island. Elspeth mills a Plains, a Karametra's Blessing, and a Sunlit Hoplite. The Hydra will mill a Ravenous Brutehead, a Noxious Hydra Breath, and a Noxious Hydra Breath. We will declare attackers and attack with both of these into the remaining 2 Hydra heads. Both of them will die. We'll gain 4 life apiece to go back up to 16. We'll reveal 4 cards to see if there are any new heads. There are no new heads, and so the Theros Beyond Death Planeswalker decks defeat the Hydra, and we will be back for hard mode. We are back for hard mode against 4 Hydra heads. We'll go ahead and draw our opening hands. Ashiok draws a Towering Wave Mystic, Devourer of Memory, Swamp, Final Death, Swamp, Swamp, and Swamp. We don't have any blue, and so I don't think we keep this hand, but because this is multiplayer, we'll go ahead and get a free mulligan. Ashiok's second hand consists of Sleep of the Dead, Island, Underworld Charger, Mindrak Harpy, Ashiok's Forerunner, Unknown Shores, and Glimpse of Freedom. It's not a good hand, but I think because of the Unknown Shores possibly eventually getting us to be able to make black mana even if we draw another island, I think we're going to keep it and hope that we can do a little better with the Harvester. Elspeth draws a Plains, a Plains, a Plains, a Plains, Leon of the Lost Pride, Daybreak Chimera, and Archon of Falling Stars. I don't love this hand, but the Leonin makes me comfortable keeping it. We'll go ahead and get started with an island on Ashiok's side and a Plains on Elspeth's side. We have no real need to cast Sleep of the Dead since we can just get it back from the graveyard, so we'll hold it as Harvester fodder and we'll pass to the Hydra. Hydra will cast the topmost card, which is Strike the Weak Spot, destroy target head. If that head was elite, the Hydra takes an extra turn after this one. We'll go ahead and destroy a regular Hydra head. This will give us 2 life apiece, taking us up to 22 each. And then we'll reveal 2 cards to see if there are any new heads. There is 1 new Hydra head. We'll put that over here. We'll take 4 damage from these heads to go back down to 18 each. At the end of the turn, we'll use the Harvester. Ashiok draws a Swamp, and we will discard Sleep of the Dead. Elspeth draws an Elspeth Undaunted Hero, and we will discard Elspeth Undaunted Hero. We'll untap. Ashiok draws a Pharika Spawn, and Elspeth draws a Plains. We'll play the Plains over here, and we'll play the Swamp over here. Elspeth will tap both Plains and play Leonin of the Lost Pride. We've seen this before. We'll tap the Warrior to give it haste. We'll attack with Leonin of the Lost Pride into a Hydra head. This will kill the Hydra head. and we'll gain 2 life apiece to go back up to 20 each. Then we'll reveal 2 cards to see if there are any new heads. We have a Shrieking Titan head. This is a 0/8 elite head. At the beginning of the Hydra's end step, each player discards a card, and Hero's Reward, when it leaves the battlefield, each player gains 4 life and draws a card. We'll pass to the Hydra, and the Hydra will cast the topmost card. This is Swallow the Hero Whole. This exiles the Leonin of the Lost Pride. We'll be forced to discard because of the Shrieking Titan head, and so in response to that trigger, Ashiok will tap the Island of the Swamp and cast Glimpse of Freedom. This is an instant. It says draw a card, and it has escape 2 blue, exile 5 other cards from your graveyard. We'll draw a card, and this is Final Death. We will take the Final Death and put that into the graveyard, and we will take a Plains and discard that over here. And then we will be taking a total of 5 damage each to go down to 15. And then at the end of the turn, we'll use the Harvester. Ashiok draws a Swamp, and we will discard the Unknown Shores. Elspeth draws a Karametra's Blessing, and we will discard that. We'll untap. Ashiok draws an Ashiok Sculptor of Fears, and Elspeth draws a Daxos Blessed by the Sun. We will play a Plains over here, and we'll play a Swamp over here. Ashiok will tap all 3, and we will play the Underworld Charger. This is a 3/3 Nightmare Horse. It can't block and has escape 4 black, exile 3 other cards from your graveyard. It escapes with 2 +1/+1 counters on it. Elspeth will tap 2 Plains and cast Daxos Blessed by the Sun. This is a 2-star legendary enchantment demigod, and its toughness is equal to our devotion to white. That's 2 right now. And whenever another creature you control enters the battlefield or dies, you gain 1 life. We do not have anything else that we can cast right now. We'll use the Warrior to give the Underworld Charger haste, and the Underworld Charger will charge right into one of the Hydra heads, killing the Hydra head, getting us 2 life apiece, taking us up to 17 each. And then we will return the Leonin of the Lost Pride, and then we will pass the turn to the Hydra. The Hydra will cast the topmost card, which is Grown from the Stump. Put exactly 2 cards named Hydra Head onto the battlefield from the Hydra's graveyard. Here's 1. Here's 2. That is it for Grown from the Stump. Then we will all be forced to discard a card. Ashiok will discard Ashiok Sculptor of Fears, and Elspeth will discard the Archon of the Falling Stars. And then we will be taking a total of 6 damage each to go to 11. And then at the end of the turn, we'll use the Harvester. Ashiok draws an Elite Instructor, and we will discard the Farika's Spawn. Elspeth draws a Indomitable Will, and we will discard the Indomitable Will, and then we'll untap. Ashiok draws a Towering Wave Mystic, and Elspeth draws a Plains. We'll play the Plains over here. Elspeth will spend 2 mana to cast the Daybreak Chimera, and Ashiok will spend 3 mana to cast Elite Instructor. This is a 2/2 human wizard. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card, then discard a card. Ashiok will draw an island, and we will discard the Towering Wave Mystic. And then we will tap the Warrior to give the Elite Instructor and the Daybreak Chimera haste. And we will go to combat. We will attack all of these into the Shrieking Titan head, and one of these into a Hydra head. And this will kill the Shrieking Titan head and the Hydra head. This will get us 6 life and draw us 1 card. So we'll go back up to 17 each. Ashiok will draw a Towering Wave Mystic, and Elspeth will draw a Dreadful Apathy. And then we will reveal 4 cards to see if there are any new heads. There are no new heads. Then we'll pass to the Hydra. The Hydra will cast the topmost card, which is a Neck Tangle. If there are 5 or more heads on the battlefield, there are not. Otherwise, reveal the top card of the Hydra's library, and the Hydra casts that card. So we'll be casting this one instead, which is Disorienting Blower. Players can't cast spells until the Hydra's next turn. We'll have to try to remember that, and we'll take 3 damage apiece, going down to 14 each. And then we'll use the Harvester. Ashiok draws a Mindrack Harpy, and we will discard the Towering Wave Mystic. Elspeth will draw an Eidolon of Inspiration, and we'll discard the Dreadful Apathy. And then we'll untap. Ashiok will draw an island, and Elspeth will draw a Karametra's Blessing. We'll play the plains over here and the island over here. Ashiok will tap 4 mana and we'll play the Mindrack Harpy. And Elspeth will tap 3 mana and we will play the Eidolon of Inspiration. This is a 2/2 Enchanted Spirit. At the beginning of combat on your turn, target creature you control gets +2/+0 until end of turn. We will go to combat, and that will cause the Mindrack Harpy to trigger. We will all mill 3. Ashiok mills a Swamp, a Unknown Shores, and a Devourer of Memory. Elspeth mills a Sunlit Hoplite, a Plains, and a Leonin of Lost Pride. The Hydra will mill a Snapping Fanghead, a Hydra Head, and a Unified Lunge. And then we will go to combat, and we will attack each Hydra Head with an Underworld Charger, a Leonin of the Lost Pride, and the Daybreak Chimera, killing all 3 Hydra Heads. That will give us 6 life apiece, taking us back up to 20. And then we're going to reveal 6 cards to see if there are any new heads. There is a Hydra Head. There's also a Ravenous Brute Head, which is an 06 Elite Head. And when it leaves the battlefield, each player gains 2 life and draws a card. We're going to put the rest of these in the graveyard. And then we will go to the Hydra's turn. The Hydra will cast the topmost card, which is a Distract the Hydra. Each player may sacrifice a creature. Each player who sacrificed a creature this way chooses a head and taps it. Each player who didn't sacrifice a creature loses 3 life. We have the life to lose, so we will lose 3 life and then take an additional 3 damage each to take 6 damage total, going down to 14. And then at the end of the turn, we'll use the Harvester. Ashiok draws a Swimmer in Nightmares, and we will discard the Mindrack Harpy. Elspeth will draw a Plains and we'll discard the Plains. Then we'll untap. Ashiok draws a Gravebreaker Lamia and Elspeth draws a Elspeth's Devotee. We will go ahead and play the island for Ashiok. And then we'll go to combat, which means that we're going to mill 3 each. Ashiok mills a Pharika Spawn, a Swamp, and a Swamp. Elspeth mills a Plains, and a Eidolon of Inspiration. The Hydra will mill a Ravenous Brute Head, a Disorienting Glower, and a Swallow the Hero Whole. And then we'll go to combat. The Leonin of the Lost Pride and the Underworld Charger will attack the Ravenous Brute Head, and the Mindrack Harpy will attack the Hydra Head. Both of these will die. We'll gain 4 life to go up to 18 and draw a card each. Ashiok draws a Swamp, and Elspeth draws a Hero of the Winds. And then we will reveal 4 cards to see if there are any new heads. There is a new Hydra Head. And then we will cast Elspeth's Devotee over here. This will grab Elspeth back from the graveyard into our hand. And we will pass the turn to the Hydra, which will cast the topmost card. That is Disorienting Glower. Players can't cast spells until the Hydra's next turn. Alright, that means that we couldn't have cast these spells on the last turn because I forgot about the other effect. So we're going to take the Elspeth Undaunted Hero back and put this back in our hand. Alright, so the Disorienting Glower will then take place. Players cannot cast spells until the Hydra's next turn. While that is on the stack, Ashiok will tap all 5 of these and cast Ashiok's Forerunner. This is a 3/3 human wizard with flash, and when it enters the battlefield, you may search your library and our graveyard for a card named Ashiok Sculptor of Fears. Reveal it, put it into your hand. If you search the library this way, shuffle it. We'll take Ashiok Sculptor of Fears, put it back in our hand. And then this will enter the battlefield. And then Disorienting Glower takes place. We may not cast any more spells. We're going to take 1 damage from the Hydra Head to go down to 17 each. At the end of the turn, we'll use the Harvester. Ashiok will draw an Underworld Charger, and we will discard the Underworld Charger. Elspeth will draw a Plains, and we will discard the Plains. And then we'll untap. Ashiok draws a Mindrack Harpy, and Elspeth draws a Daybreak Chimera. We'll play the Swamp over here. We cannot cast spells again, but we'll go ahead and get started by attacking with the Underworld Charger into the Hydra Head. That will defeat the Hydra Head, getting us 2 life apiece, taking us up to 19 each, and we'll reveal 2 cards to see if there are any new heads. There's one new Hydra head. And then, since we can't cast spells, we'll go ahead and tap 6 mana and use the Furika Spawn's ability. This is not casting a spell. It's Escape, and we'll exile 3 other cards from our graveyard. We'll be exiling the Unknown Shores and 2 Swamps. And then this will enter the battlefield. This is a 3/4 Gorgon, and escape 5 black, exile 3 other cards from your graveyard, and it escapes with 2+1/+1 counters on it. When it enters the battlefield this way, each opponent sacrifices a non-Gorgon creature. This will enter the battlefield with 2+1/+1 counters on it. This will cause the Hydra's head to be sacrificed. We'll gain 2 life apiece to go up to 21 each. And then we'll reveal 2 cards to see if there are any new heads. There are no new heads, and so the Theros Beyond Death Planeswalker decks defeat the Hydra in hard mode as well. Let me know what your thoughts were about these games in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button. If you'd like to see more of my videos, you can hit subscribe. This was Refresh. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.